We're so obsessed with getting there.
But like, where's there?
But that's it.
Yeah.
But where's there? I just think that we've become so pain avoidant. It's how do I get through things with the least amount of pain as possible? How do I become self-aware? How do I get greater emotional intelligence? How do I get greater resilience? What's the question underneath the question? I think what we're going to end up lacking is wisdom.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the New Rules Podcast. It's your girl, Breezy, and I am here with the wonderful, the infamous, my boss, the man you wish was your boss, Mr. Adrian Crawford.
What's happening? How are you today?
All good things. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Nice. Well, welcome to the podcast, everyone. This podcast is all about unlocking authenticity and empowering the authentic leader because we believe that that leads to true human flourishing. If we have added any value to you, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Give us a follow on Instagram at Write New Rules and check out our LinkedIn profile, which is associated with Adrian Crawford. We would love to hear how this podcast has impacted you, as it means so much to us to hear your stories. So Please do that.
Absolutely. Let's get to it today.
Today we're going to talk about how to hack your life.
Oh, God.
No,
All
I'm just
right.
kidding. I'm just kidding. Kind of close, but not really. Can you share with us a little bit about the topic that we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, I just have had a lot of questions lately, and a lot of it comes from kind of, I think, a lot of the next generation, and so more Gen Z millennials. And the question they've been asking a lot, they're asking very curious questions, but the more and more I have listened to the questions, what I'm starting to realize is that they've all learned how to live with hacks, right? So we have apps all the time for fitness, apps for sleep, hacks for focus, hacks for, almost everything. But what they're really trying to find is what are the hacks for actual life? And what I think is, though I do think there are ways to be more efficient, I'm all for that. But I think what I think they're missing is just they're trying to get through life. I think underneath that question, because I always want to know what's the question underneath the question. I think the question they're trying to get to, or their answer they're trying to get to, is how do I get through things with the least amount of pain as possible? And I think that if we're not careful, I think you're gonna miss out on some things because there's just certain things in life you're not able to hack.
What do you think? You just mentioned that you think that they're trying to hack pain in life, essentially.
Yep.
Is there anything underneath that you think they're really asking you? Like what pain? Like what experiences? Have you found a theme and what exactly they're asking? Well,
I think it's just they're wanting to get to the destination and not actually have to walk through a process. Mm-hmm. So it's, it doesn't matter if it's kind of like, man, I want to be farther along in my career. How do I get emotional, for example? How do I become authentic? How do I become self-aware? How do I get greater emotional intelligence? How do I get greater resilience? And all these questions are trying to say, hey, what are the 2 or 3 things you can tell me that I could go do right now, just as if I were to go, kind of and put something into an app or whatever, and that can get me to my destination. And that's really underneath it. I think they don't want to go through the process because there really is pain in the process. And again, I'm not saying that that's all bad pain. I think we think of pain again, pain doesn't feel great, but it's not like all bad pain. When you lift weights, it's painful, but it's not bad pain. It's good pain that's helping you grow. I just think that we've become so pain avoidant that if we can get there with the least amount of pain or sometimes the least amount of effort, the better.
Where do you think the pain avoidance comes from?
I think it's just the way that our world's kind of structured and set up now. I think that we have a world that, we have, again, apps that allows us to get we can get instant TV. I mean, you can watch, thousands upon thousands of shows and just by opening up your phone. I think we get, Amazon. If you have an Amazon delivery place or kind of a warehouse, you can get stuff even the same day that you order in the morning, get it that night. So I think our lives are trying to be more efficient, and I'm all for efficiency, but I think we don't really have a lot anymore that kind of causes us to actually have to, just where life is built around kind of waiting. Pain sometimes is just waiting. And so that's another part of pain. I think we have become such an impatient culture that there's nothing left really that where it takes time to actually get something. I'm a firm believer, I want stuff instantly. Even now I've gotten to a place where in my own life, I want something instantly where I'm definitely looking to see if it's here in my city before I order it online because I want my hands on it that day. Even if it's $10 or $15 more expensive, I don't care. I want it in my hands that day. Mm-hmm. So I just think it's the way life is set up. I mean, I've talked about it before. There were things, when I grew up or where, you had you didn't have instant access to people. You had to kind of wait maybe till the next day to see somebody at school, or you had to, wait for a week or a couple weeks to get something that you would send in the mail. Now it's just instant. So I think that's kind of where we're not built that way anymore.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking about, Gen Z, millennials, and you described a little bit of this current cultural moment. So you would say that prior generations and different cultural moments historically in the United States, people were not pain avoidant?
No, I think that I think we've always been trying to use technology, always been trying to use laws and whatever to try to make our lives as convenient as possible. That's kind of been the American thing. So in no way am I just saying, in this generation, they're trying to do it. I just think what's happening, it's more expedited with this generation because like I was saying, there were certain structures that made you kind of have to have a little bit of patience, or there were certain things that you didn't have instant access to just because of technology. Now, and with that technology, it's kind of it's sped everything up, and so it's not that I don't think people in the past weren't pain avoidant. I think at all levels and all generations, but I think technology has allowed us, and I'm not saying that as a knock on tech. I actually am all for tech, but I think there were natural things that allowed us to kind of have a little bit more resilience. But here's the truth about it: I'm watching my generation above me kind of fall into the same trap too. Because now we have all the technology as well. So we've kind of lost the ability to kind of go through some processes as well.
What do you think that desire does to somebody? Because I'm trying to think about whether they're older and they have that leaning, or whether they're Gen Z, millennial, and grew up in this current cultural moment. We still went through COVID. Mm-hmm. Yeah. People are still entering the workforce, seeing mass layoffs. Yep. Most of Gen Z has never worked full-time in an office space. And so things like that I think naturally create pain. Mm-hmm. What does that do to somebody when you are still going through those things, but your pursuit is to quicken it?
Yeah, I think is that you become incredibly disappointed because some of the questions and things that I got a question from somebody recently, and that was one of the things they said. They were like, well, they kind of were kind of pushing at me saying, well, why, it's always it feels like I have to get older to to finally get everything. And what I always say, I don't want to ever age shame people because I know people who are my age and older who are absolutely, who are as immature as my son, and I say that they act like he's more mature than they are. So I'm not saying based off of your age that that speaks to just, everybody who's a millennial, Gen Z, they don't want to go through any of this stuff. There's plenty of people, you're one, who's willing to go through stuff. But when I actually was talking to this person, what they kept saying was I feel like I have to get older. But what I didn't want to do is age shame them, but I also had to tell them yeah, man, you got to go through life. There's just experience in life that you can't get past. That's just time. I mean, you think about a friendship you had since maybe Bri, you're thinking about a friendship you had when you were 4 versus a friendship you had when you were 22. You've had that one for 20 years, 2 years. No, there's time and longevity has made that relationship probably a little bit closer because you've been through some stuff together that you can't there's just nothing you can do to speed up that process of having those things. And so I think what it does for people is that I think they can get disappointed. I think they can get they can start to become hopeless. They can, their hope gets deferred. And so they begin to kind of get to a place of where like they just kind of give up. I'm just never going to change. I'm never going to have this. I'm never going to be able to figure this out. And I think what it'll end up leading to is people kind of quitting early on the journey and not being fully developed.
What do you think that's going to do to society 10, 20 years from now?
I think what it'll lead to, and what I think it's kind of leading to right now, it'll be a lot of people saying things that are good soundbite things, things that they maybe read in a book, things that sound, they've used Chat GPT to make it to word it to where it sounds really pithy. But I think we'll have a lot of people and a lot of leaders or people who aren't really leaders because they really don't have any wisdom. I think what we're going to end up lacking is wisdom, because I think wisdom comes with actual wisdom is really this idea of applied knowledge. But I think wisdom comes when, man, you learn, you hear, you observe, and then you apply it. Does it work? Does it not work? You've tested it. You've seen it. It's something about, you think about the first time, Bri, you as a competitive cheerleader, the first time you went to national versus the last time you went to nationals, you could tell somebody younger, you give them wisdom. I remember you were telling me one time, you're like, man, I was cold outside. And man, so, the first time you did, you were just trying to figure out what the heck to do. And maybe you had somebody older who would help you, but it was a whole different thing when you went into it. You're like, okay, I knew how I had to warm up, what I had to do, what I had to expect, because I've been through it. And not only did you go through it, you actually learned from it. And so now you applied it. So now when you're talking to somebody else, you can actually give them wisdom that actually moves something. Wisdom moves things. And I think we are in a culture right now that we just want things to kind of sound pithy. And so I think we're going to be a generation or a country or really a people that just lacks a lot of wisdom. And I think wisdom is very much so important.
It's really interesting you say that, because while you were talking, I was thinking about the individual who asked you that question. And some of it begs the question of, well, if you are 22, do you even have the wisdom of a 22-year-old? Or do you even have the wisdom of your current age, when most of the time the answer is, no, you're probably deep down behind the curtain, you're actually probably 16 in a lot of different ways. And so it's not that you have to, there is the practicality of you need to live a lot of life to gain wisdom, but have you even learned anything from the things that you've experienced so far?
No, that's a great point. No, I think sometimes you're right that people, you're not even at your age range, but when you're always trying to, again, I think we become, and I understand it. We're so obsessed with getting there.
But where's there?
But that's it. Yeah. But where's there? There was a skit a long time ago. It was Chris Rock used to have a show called The Chris Rock Show. I'm dating myself. So he used to have The Chris Rock Show. And there was always this, in black community, black culture, there used to always be this thing about, man, black people, we're still trying to work to get there. And so Chris Rock made this made this little graph. And he was he's like, I came up here to The Chris Rock Show, the scientific way to figure how many steps it's going to take for black people to get there. You know what I mean? And so he was like, what got him there, what set it back. But what's interesting, and I say that, is because I don't think people know. I don't think people actually critically think to say, what really is there for you? What does that mean? What does it look like for you to have whatever that is? And I think what I really do believe, I think that people's there is that it's not as painful. I think that's their there. And that's where I feel like the disappointment's going to come. Because once you get there, it doesn't mean that it's not painful. It just is the ability to process that pain a lot faster. It's the ability to, some of the things that cause you pain right now, you start to realize they're not that big of a deal. Things that you've actually done some real work through, you actually get healed from, may not cause you pain. But if your whole thing is getting there, to have a life that brings you comfort and no discomfort or no disappointment, or, man, everything is up and to the right, that's where I feel like you're going to get to. That's where I feel like people are hoping to get to, and that's not it. And whatever, and again, that could be in a lot of different things. Is that money for you? Is that freedom in your time? Is that a relationship? Is that living in a certain city, having a certain type of job? But what I will tell you is none of those things are going to take away this idea, this part of just, man, we're going to have to deal with some difficult things.
Okay, this goes into something that I was kind of researching before this. And I don't know if you've seen this trend. I'm sure you've heard about manifestation.
Yes.
But I don't know if you've seen this trend where, like, people will be like, hashtag Delulu, like, living delusional, like, I'm Delulu. Like, it's like a thing.
Okay.
It's the Gen Z version of fake it till you make it.
Okay.
And it's a different way to also verbalize, like, manifestation.
Okay.
Like, if I go into my job and I'm just pretend that I'm in a role that I want to be in, I'll get that role. And people will go on, like, TikTok and they'll tell their stories about how they did that and how they got the role that they're essentially, like, pretending to be in. So it's a mix of, like, oh, fake it till you make it and you'll eventually make it.
Yep.
And also manifestation. And how this ties to me is because being delusional is self-deception.
Yep.
And it's so, I just want to get your thoughts on this. It's so interesting that a generation who flaunts authenticity in the same vein is flaunting, like, self-deception.
Because here's why. Is because I believe they've always been they've always been deceived, because what they have viewed as authenticity isn't authenticity. It's been a deception. Whatever you think and feel, that is what you are. Or whatever you even may desire is what you think you are. But your desire has to bump up with, do you have the skills? Do you have any evidence that whatever that thing is, that you have that? And I think that what is showing up is, it's just now what's playing out in real life is what was always there. They just had a different wrapper on it. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like it was covered up in this, like, this authenticity wrapper. Now it's a delusional wrapper, because it's always been delusion's always been underneath it. It's just now it gets said kind of this way. And I think that, because if you think about this, think about why people live like a delusional life or disassociation. It's because they are trying to be pain avoidant.
Right.
And so that's what it is. They don't, the grind of going to a job right now, and man, that job that you're working as a junior analyst, that job that you're working, you know, maybe as a new real estate agent, that job that you're working, as a junior engineer, you're barely maybe making your bills. You're having to make, with inflation being what it is, and you maybe have to you thought you're going to have your own house by now, but now you got two other roommates, and you're going to your job and you're kind of doing grunt work. You maybe not be doing like the, designing projects or selling $1 million home. And so what that does, now that's painful, because why? We were told, man, just manifest, believe, pull out what you are, and you're going to get this life. And you're like, no, Chief, it doesn't really work like that. Because you saw that one person. You saw that one person who, kind of knocks out the park. Everybody sees the end of the story of Mr. Beast, and they see, oh, man, he has his YouTube channel. But what you don't realize is I was like watching, and I was really impressed by him, of what that young man actually does. When I was listening to it, and that told me when I was watching him, that guy works. He has said, yeah, in this point in my life, this is what I love to do. So there's times where, I think he will go 16, 18, 20-hour days. And then he's like, when my body feels like I need a day off, I take a day off. But the guy has dedicated his life, and he has talent. And so I'm like, man, but that's one guy, but we see the end of his story, but he's worked hard at it. But not everyone is going to be that way. The point of why I say that is that we live delusional lives to avoid the pain, the pain of the grind, of the process. But where you're ultimately trying to go, because you're not just trying to get somewhere, you're actually trying to stay somewhere. You got to go through the process, and actually not only go through the process, but learn in the process. Be present in the process. Gain the knowledge, the wisdom, the insight. Learn about yourself. Learn how you respond when things don't go well. And then ask yourself, why do I respond this way? Learn how to have humility and apologize when you mess up. Learn how to go and get insight and go to somebody else and say, man, are you willing to help me and mentor me? These are all parts of the process of actually becoming what you want to be in the future, but the process is there. I've been saying it lately. It's the backstory. The backstory tells the story. Most people don't want to have a backstory. They just want to get to the end goal of the big story, but you got to have a backstory first.
So how do you think that a society that's pain avoidant, but also a society that is obsessed with like therapy and therapeutic words, because therapy is literally for you to process your pain.
Yeah.
So how do you think that those coexist together?
I think it coexists because, well, this may be a bad analogy, but like we have more access to fitness and health than ever before, but yet still we're not a healthy overall. Statistically, we're not a healthy culture. Yeah. I think you can go to therapy and talk through it and do that. But you and I both know, as two people who've gone through these deep processes of therapy, that once you leave there, you're in your therapist's office an hour. Maybe you pay 2 hours. Maybe you go once a week. Maybe you go once every other week. You have a lot of other time in your life that now are you actually taking what you're learning and now applying it. Not just, I know the problem. I think a lot of people go, and it's now become a badge of honor to know your problems.
Right.
And that's all people want to know. Like, oh man, like, I've got trauma from this, or I've got this, and they're real things. But the question I want to ask, I want to hear the stories like, man, have you healed? Man, have you healed from the trauma? Because that's all I'm hearing is a lot of people saying that, man, I've become aware, and then they're on their journey. But my whole thing is this. I'm like, dude, you've been on the journey now for like 10 years. Either like you suck or your therapist sucks and don't want to apply. Right. Like somebody is not doing their job, because it's like, I'm not saying it doesn't take time, but man, like it's the application. Are you any better? And I just think it's a badge of honor now. I think it's just another way. I'll say this clear. It's just another way for us to have more attention, because it's the new trend. Let me tell you this: if the trend became people getting healthy, then everybody would be working harder to become emotionally healthy. To become emotionally healthy, it's hard work. Going back to what we've been talking about, to get emotionally healthy, it is freaking hard work and is incredibly painful.
That's horrible.
So if you're pain avoidant, it's not pain. I mean, it's a little bit of pain. Let me be clear, and I don't want to minimize anybody that's gone through some deep level of stuff. But like talking about something, yeah, that can be painful. But you got to be able to do more than that. Like now you got to start applying. When that moment hits where you get triggered by something and you have a bad response, or you naturally have a response to do whatever, something self-destructive, something that makes you coping mechanisms, whatever, that you stop yourself and you do the hard work to not go there. That's painful. And when we haven't been built to do that, that's why I don't think we're getting healthier. I think we're more aware of pain, but I don't think we're getting healthier.
I think that's a really good way to put it. It also seems therapy is just another way to gather hacks.
Yeah.
Like maybe I'll be able to get some hacks to make me pain free, when really it's just about giving you the tools so that you can continue to process the pain that has happened and process the pain that will continue to happen, not so that you can keep pain from happening to you.
Yeah. Because here's the thing. When you've got real pain issues, you create coping mechanisms. We all have. I have. I know you have. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, a lot of times, those coping mechanisms aren't great.
Yeah, they're addictions.
Yes. And so think about this. So now when you do that, here's another pain point. You have to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, yes, what happened to me was wrong, and what happened to me was bad, and it's not okay. And then going through your process of grief and dealing with that. But you still then have to look yourself in the mirror and still realize, like, man, but I'm now here. I've now built habits. I now, because someone used me physically, now I use my body to control other people. And you have to look yourself in the mirror, and you're wondering why you have broken relationships. And then what we don't want to do is have to face the reality of what that pain caused us. That is why it's so important to get healthy, because the pain of what happened to you, or the pain of that moment, continues to be the gift that keeps on giving. And the person that hurts the most is you. Your coping mechanisms aren't healthy for you. They're not making you better. So that's another thing, that if we don't learn how to go through the process of dealing with that pain, then we're never going to move forward and actually get better.
I think that's good. I thought about what I was going to say earlier, and we say, hacks to deal with the process of life, which is generally very vague. Yep. And this is going to sound really melancholy. I would love to hear your thoughts on it, which will probably be even more melancholy. It's just going to be really bad. But I'm like, okay, because this is a very existential conversation. Like, we're talking about pain, and that's where pain gets you.
Yep.
And the whole, what is life? Like, what is this even all for? Totally, we're familiar. But sometimes it feels like the journey of life is just essentially understanding yourself enough to know what pain you are and are not supposed to endure, and having the right tools to endure it. And there is hope on the other side of that. Like, being able to endure the proper pain will create, great work from your hands, great pieces of art and that kind of stuff. But that, to me, that is the journey of authenticity. Like, that's the journey of unbecoming.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think what ends up happening is this point, is that I want to be clear. Why we talk about pain and what we're doing is because it's like our I don't, this whole thing of writing new rules, we could spend all of our time talking about, man, just positive, belief and everything's great. Like, no, we actually want to bring something to your life that's going to help you write new rules. That's not really being said because it really is true. But I want to be clear. Life is dreams and nightmares. It really is. I mean, think about this. One of the greatest ways to see this is in the morning. Daylight saving time, right? 5 a.m. now, like that sun's coming up, okay?
Horrible.
Yeah. And so that sun's coming up, and when that sun starts to come up, what happens, though? You still have the darkness at your back. And I think that's a great picture of life. There are a lot of enjoyable things. Like here's a great example of this. As we're recording this podcast, yesterday we had a session with a group that we first started working with this group. There was some resistance or whatever because our methods of how we go about it are different. We did a session with them, and our team here did a phenomenal job preparing for that session. It was an incredible time. We got really great movement with this client. It was awesome. I leave there. It was my daughter's 13th birthday. Got to see her. Super excited, all those things. I get a phone call that from my mother-in-law, or from my wife, that, her actual grandmother, potentially, she's much older. I mean, she's in her mid-90s, is getting ready to pass away. So she's staying with my mother-in-law, my father-in-law. I go from all that great day to then I have to now go to my in-laws' house and pray, kind of last rites over like my mother-in-law. Then I have to go and speak and do this panel 20 minutes later, and it was a great conversation. I was dry, and then after that, my father's in town, and somebody else who works for us, Cody, we go hang out afterwards. My whole, yesterday, it was like dreams, nightmares, and it was like, and I remember going to bed last night, I'm like, this is life. And I think that if we don't understand that, you won't celebrate the moments and really enjoy when there are high moments. So that's why being present is so important. When I walked out of our room yesterday of meeting, and I was driving, I was like, man, I was really excited about what we did, the work we did. And then, you know what? When I went to go pray for my wife's grandmother, I was in the moment. Because I was in the moment to see, man, watching her labor to take breath. And it just was a reminder of how God gives us breath, and then it's like how He breathes life into us, and then life gets breath is what gets taken at the end. And that whole thing is being present in the moment. It's I was learning something there, and then instead of running from that moment, I was trying to be present in that moment. And I think if we can do things like that, I think it can start helping us understand and actually being even the high moment that's in here, the high moments even being higher because you're there. And the low moments not being as low, but actually being moments where we have a right perspective of the low moments to where they impact us, but they don't take us down so far. We actually can learn even in those low moments as well.